making a lot of money right here, but man, the guy on, oh man, I'm with the other guy. I'm with you. Skinny jeans, let's get it.
And it's a transformation of everything. A better haircut, shave the beard, the whole, everything
He's defined.
Oh, yeah,
muscle
absolutely.
That just lets you know when you don't play for the Cleveland Browns, you end up looking better.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's good stuff. We should all start playing.
Yep.
Okay, stunning accusation
to the show.
on Twitter over the weekend regarding Ben Roethlisberger.
All day. I'm sick of it.
What are you going to do about it, though? Not much with those pecs. Former Steelers running back Josh Harris said that back in 2014, Big Ben intentionally fumbled the ball. The offensive coordinator at the time, Todd Haley, had called a run play when Ben wanted to take a knee. The accusation being Ben figured he'd prove himself right by letting go of the ball. Harris adding, at that moment, I knew what kind of person Ben Roethlisberger was. Chris Kenny, what was your reaction when you heard this?
Well, my reaction is similar to CeCe's. I mean, I understand that's a damning accusation, but it's not something that we can go out there and prove. So we'll never know the truth. But to me, the fact that somebody would go on the record and make a comment like this about Ben's football character, I think that's the indictment right there.
I'm with you because if this is not true or not, it really to me didn't matter. But for someone to feel comfortable, that means there had to be things before that.
And that they could think it's possible.
But that's the thing,
you
though.
You would never think it was like if this was a Mad Libs or a blind reveal, and we said, hey, there's a story about a quarterback, one of the starting quarterbacks in this league, that a teammate is alleging he was so mad at an offensive coordinator play call that he intentionally fumbled the ball to stick it to him. Guess what quarterback that's being alleged about? Wouldn't he be the first guess?
Oh, 100%. He's at the top. He's at the top of the list.
Isn't that almost the bigger issue? Because you guys are right, we can't prove it. Now, the reason that I find this more credulous than you guys do is because I had heard this exact accusation at the time, that Big Ben would sabotage a play if he thought Haley called the wrong play. Now, I didn't hear the specific this game, this fumble, but I had heard that if he didn't like the play call that came in, he would sabotage it one way or another, that he had done that before. But it just fits with the story. It just makes sense. And the video, while it might not prove his guilt, the video doesn't exonerate him. You don't look at the video and say, man, that's a fumbled snap that happens all the time. I understand it could be accidental, but the video doesn't help his case in my mind either.
Yeah, there's a couple instances. Remember Cam Newton fumbled the ball in the Super Bowl?
And didn't dive.
And people said he didn't. People don't know if he could have jumped on it, dove on it, but his reaction time and how people felt about Cam led them to believe that he wasn't doing his best. That's just because that's why I don't want to overreact to the Ben. I know what kind of leader Ben is. I've talked to a bunch of his teammates. I've been covering his whole career. Nothing for me is going to change because one time we were in a playoff game playing the Rams. The Rams ended up going on to win the Super Bowl that year, and Jeff George had an exchange from center that he didn't get clean, and the ball was on the ground. We ended up losing the game, but all those people who were not fans of Jeff George, they came up with all these different stories of why he didn't get on the ball, how they didn't say as far as him doing it deliberately, but when you think a certain way and certain things happen, it's easy for people to continue just to draw the conclusions because of that person's reputation.
But I think what you said is important. I mean, the fact that it says more about the fact that a former teammate felt compelled or felt comfortable enough to say something than what actually happened. And you mentioned it was part of the story. It's part of the narrative that has been going on with this team. What do you think about that?
Well, how your teammates feel about you is the ultimate barometer on your sports character. And I think that based on the commentary that we've heard coming out of that locker room, a lot of guys question Big Ben's leadership style. They don't like the fact that he goes on the record to criticize guys in the media, especially some of the more talented players on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. It just so happens that Pittsburgh over the last several seasons have had some other star players that were dealing with some very public issues with the club. I mean, going back to the Antonio Brown live Facebook in the locker room when Mike Tomlin is addressing the team, Le'Veon Bell and his public contract dispute with Kevin Colbert, the general manager of the Steelers. But I mean, amongst all of that is your star quarterback who's won 2 Super Bowls for the franchise. I mean, you would rely on that guy to be a stabilizing force for the team. And Ben Roethlisberger has been the exact opposite.
Right.
I mean, this team started off 1-2-1 through their first 4, and they finished the season losing 4 out of the last 6. I mean, there's a reason for that. CC, they tell you want to get out to a fast start and finish strong. The Steelers haven't done that. They haven't lived up to the expectations that we've had for them the last few seasons. And I think Big Ben Roethlisberger is a part of that. I don't think that we can ignore his role in all of the dysfunction in the Steelers organization. So, yeah, I know Lev Bell is gone. I know they moved on from Antonio Brown. But I don't think the distractions are gone in Pittsburgh. And I think that has a lot to do with Ben Roethlisberger leaving something to be desired with his leadership style.
And Canty, in your 11 years in the NFL, my 16 years in the NFL, 27 combined, there are times where we were in the huddle and the players were not happy with the defensive call. There were players not happy with the offensive call. And there were times I thought about freelancing. There were times I thought about doing the right thing. But I knew the next day we would have to watch the film, and I wouldn't be able to make an excuse because they say in the NFL, the eye in the sky does not lie. People do, but the film doesn't. So I wouldn't be able to tell people, oh, man, I thought this was going to happen. So I never wanted to put myself in that predicament where I was going to be held accountable by my teammates. But in Pittsburgh's locker room, there is no accountability. So I'm not saying this is true. But what I am telling you, there are other things that have happened in Pittsburgh that would lead people, that would be easy for people to believe this to be true.
And it is such an indictment on the perception of the leader of the team amongst his teammates that anyone could believe this. That it's the same to me story of, even though I know most people believe the idea that the Seahawks didn't give the ball to Marshawn Lynch on the goal line was because they were worried about who the Super Bowl MVP and face of the team was going to be. That is an absurd premise to begin with. And I know Chris believes they made the right play call, or that they shouldn't have run the ball anyway. But just set all that aside for a moment. It became like Slim Charles line. If it's a lie, we fight on the lie. Even if it's not true, it's hugely problematic that a portion of the locker room believed it could be true. Like, it was hugely problematic that a lot of those Seattle defenders thought we threw a Super Bowl away because we cared about optics, even if that was nonsense. Even if this isn't true, it's incredibly problematic that I know for a fact members of the coaching staff, I know for a fact members of the coaching staff during that era of Steelers football thought Ben would sabotage a play, not all the time, but had it in him to do it if he didn't like it. You now have a running back saying, week 17, division title on the line, fumbles the football on purpose. Like, if people could believe that about you, if people could believe that an offensive lineman wants them to run the ball because he's killing this guy, and they call a pass play, and he just olays a guy and let the quarterback get hit, that is such an indictment on who that offensive lineman is as a football player that people wouldn't immediately say that is crazy. It would never happen.
To your point about the play call in Super Bowl 49 with the Seattle Seahawks, perception is reality. And it was real enough for those guys on the defensive side of the ball to become an issue with Russell Wilson. And it forced their GM, John Snyder, to move on from a lot of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. And looking at this Pittsburgh Steelers team, I mean, the same could be said about Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, not only is this living out there, but you got teammates co-signing it. Isaac Redman, the running back, came out and said, yeah, Ben separated himself from the team, and guys got fed up with him criticizing them publicly. I mean, Ryan Clark was on at another shop this morning talking about this in terms of intentionally fumbling the ball, not being outside of the realm of possibility, and he was one of the Steelers' team leaders. So, I mean, this is one of those things that I just can't believe. In 15 years and being around pro football, I ain't never heard of nothing like this. And so the fact that this is who you're relying on going into the 2019 season, it has to worry you if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and if you're a part of that organization. Because guess what? They didn't get more talented this offseason. And a big part of how they're going to be successful this year is having a bunch of guys that play above the X's and O's. And in order for your guys to be able to do that, you have to have a strong culture and have great chemistry in your locker room. And it doesn't feel like the Steelers have that.
I have a rule. I don't really care about my teammates if they like me. I really don't.
Nope. Doesn't matter.
I don't really care.
Doesn't matter.
But if you were able to talk to them and they didn't respect me after being with me, I don't care if they were with me a week, a month, 10 years, if they didn't respect me, it would be a major problem. And for people to leak stories out about that, it says about Ben's character and their lack of overall respect for who he is as a leader and as an athlete.
All right, Chris, thanks for hanging out today. Appreciate it.
You, man.
Take a break.